Let's start with Spencer, because honestly, how could we start anywhere else? When we last saw him at the end of 1923, he had lost Alex. He had lost the woman he crossed oceans for, the woman he gave up everything for, and he had to carry that grief back to Montana and somehow keep living. And according to Elsa's narration, he did keep living. He lived all the way until 1969. He never remarried. He raised a son with a widow whose identity we still do not fully know. And he ran the Dutton Ranch through some of the most turbulent decades in American history. That is a lot of weight for one man to carry. And now, seeing him in this trailer, you can feel every single pound of it. The Spencer we are looking at in 1944 is not the young, reckless, fire-in-his-eyes man we met in Africa. He is older now, quieter, more weathered. There is something behind his eyes that was not there before, and anyone who has ever carried real grief knows exactly what that look is. It is the look of a man who has already survived the worst thing he could imagine, and somehow found a reason to keep going anyway. And that reason, I believe, is his son. Because everything Spencer does from this point forward, every decision, every sacrifice, every moment where he chooses the ranch over his own peace, it is all for that boy. It is all for the next generation of Duttons. And that is what makes him so compelling to watch, because he is not motivated by ambition or pride anymore. He is motivated by love and by duty. Two things that the Dutton family has always understood better than anyone else. Now, what I noticed immediately in the trailer is how different the ranch looks. And I do not just mean visually, although visually it is stunning. I mean the atmosphere of it. In 1923, the ranch felt alive in a certain way. It had Jacob and Kara holding it together with sheer willpower and faith. It had that warmth even in the darkest moments, because those two were the heart of everything. The ranch feels like a place that has been through things. Like the land itself remembers what it cost to keep it. And Spencer is walking through it like a man who carries the memory of everyone who came before him. You can see it in the way he moves, in the way he looks at the land, in the way he interacts with the people around him. There is a reverence there that was not fully formed in 1923, because he was still becoming who he needed to be. But now he is fully that man. He is a Dutton in the truest sense of the word, not just by blood, but by everything he has chosen to endure and protect. And that, honestly, is what I am most excited to explore this season. Because Spencer's arc in 1923 was about running away and then finally coming home. His arc in 1944 is going to be about what it actually means to stay. To plant your feet in the ground and refuse to move no matter what comes at you. And given that the entire world is literally at war in 1944, the things that are going to come at him are going to be extraordinary. The trailer gives us glimpses of tension on the ranch, tension in the surrounding community, and tension within the family itself. And I want to break all of it down piece by piece. But first, let's talk about the one thing that every single fan has been asking about since the moment 1944 was announced. Let's talk about the generation that comes after Spencer. Because his son is in this trailer, and from what I can see, he is every bit as complicated and as magnetic as his father. He has that same stillness that Spencer carries, but there is also something restless underneath it, something that has not yet been tested the way Spencer was tested. And 1944 is going to test him. Hard. Because that is what this year does to young men. Now let's talk about Elizabeth. Because if Spencer is the heart of 1944, then Elizabeth is the soul of it. And I have been thinking about her return since the moment 1923 ended. Because her exit from Montana was one of the most quietly heartbreaking moments of the entire show. She did not leave in anger. She did not leave because she stopped loving Jack or stopped caring about the ranch. She left because she was pregnant, grieving, and completely alone in a place that had taken almost everything from her. And she went to Boston to be with her mother, to raise her child somewhere safer, somewhere further from all that pain. And honestly, you cannot blame her for that, not even a little. But here is the thing about Montana. Here is the thing about the Dutton Ranch specifically. It has this pull to it that you cannot explain rationally. It gets into people. It gets into their blood and their bones. And no matter how far they run or how long they stay away, it always finds a way to bring them back. And Elizabeth is no different. Because she is coming back. I genuinely believe that with everything in me. The trailer gives us enough to work with. And when you combine it with everything we already know from Elsa's narration and the overall direction of the story, Elizabeth's return is not just likely. It is necessary. The Dutton Ranch needs a matriarch. It has always needed a matriarch. Think about every era of this franchise and what anchors it emotionally. In Yellowstone, it is Beth, in her own brutal and complicated way. In 1923, it was Kara, completely and without question. Kara was the moral center of that entire show. She was the one who held Jacob together when he was ready to burn the world down. She was the one who kept the faith when faith was the hardest thing to hold on to. And now Kara is gone. Jacob is gone. And the ranch is left without that anchor. Spencer is strong, but strength is not the same thing as warmth. She is not a soft woman. She has been through too much to be soft. But she has a warmth to her, a genuine human warmth, that the Dutton Ranch is going to desperately need in this era. So how does she come back? That is the question. And I have thought about this a lot because the reason matters just as much as the return itself. The most obvious possibility is that her mother dies. She went to Boston to be with her mother, and that was her anchor there, that was her reason for staying. If her mother passes, suddenly Boston is just a city where she is a widow with a child and no real roots. And Montana, for all its pain, is where her history lives. It is where Jack is buried. It is where she built something real, even if it was cut short. Coming back to that, coming back to raise her child near the land his father loved, that makes complete, emotional sense. And it is the kind of quiet, human motivation that this franchise handles beautifully when it wants to. Another possibility is that she comes back for a funeral. Kara or Jacob passing would be significant enough to bring her home. And once she is there, once she breathes that air again and sees that land, and sees Spencer, and sees how much her child lights up being there, leaving again might feel impossible. That is how Montana works in this universe. You come back for a moment, and it keeps you forever. There is also the possibility that her son is the one who pulls her back. Children in this franchise have a way of feeling the gravity of their legacy even when nobody has told them about it directly. And Jack's son, growing up hearing stories maybe, feeling that undefined pull towards something he cannot name, might start asking questions that Elizabeth cannot answer from Boston. Questions that can only be answered by going to the source, by going to Montana, by standing on that land and feeling what his father felt. And Elizabeth, being the woman she is, would not deny her child that, even if walking back onto that ranch means walking back into grief she thought she had managed to leave behind. Now, here is where it gets really interesting. Because Elizabeth returning to Montana means Elizabeth and Spencer sharing a space. And those two have a dynamic that has never been fully explored. Because in 1923 they were never really in the same place at the same time long enough to develop a real relationship. They were always on opposite ends of something. Either Spencer was away, or the circumstances kept them apart. But in 1944 they are going to be in the same house, raising children who are growing up side by side, running a ranch together, navigating grief together. And that dynamic, that particular combination of shared loss and shared responsibility and shared history, is one of the most emotionally complex things this show could possibly explore. I want to be very clear about something though, because I know this conversation is already happening in the fandom, and I have very strong feelings about it. I do not want Spencer and Elizabeth to get romantically involved, and I mean that sincerely. It would feel like a betrayal of everything both of them went through. Spencer lost Alex. That love was the center of his entire arc in 1923. It was the thing that brought him home. And Elizabeth lost Jack, who was her whole world in that show. Putting those two together romantically would cheapen both of those losses in a way that I think would genuinely hurt the story. What I want to see, what I think would actually be far more powerful and far more interesting, is a relationship built entirely on mutual respect and shared purpose. Two people who loved people the other cared about. Two people who are bound together not by romance, but by grief, and by duty, and by the children they are raising and the land they are protecting. That is a relationship with real depth and real tension and real emotional stakes. And it does not need romance to be compelling.